What's up, Melanated family? This is your boy Harrison from MelanatedFathers.com and Melanated Fathers TV, bringing you another episode of Melanated Mondays, where I come to you every Monday morning to talk about a specific issue, either facing our families, facing our, children specifically, facing us as parents, just being as honest as possible with ourselves, y'all, about the different things that we go through in our community and, how we are all accountable to a degree of what goes on around us. You feel me? So I hope everybody had a real good weekend. I didn't do much this weekend, just chill with the family. My youngest son had basketball practice, so we did a little bit of that. Didn't have a game this week. He had a bye week, so he had practice instead. So, we was able to relax. I hope all my family out there, man, who work during the week, I hope during the weekends you're able to relax, just recoup. If you're working for somebody else, I know how stressful that can be, dealing with whatever company you may be working for. So I know we use the weekend as like a time to relax and let our hair down, or continue to work in, whatever you actually do for a living, right? But look, on today's show, what I want to talk about, because when I look at our community and I look at a lot of our parents, I see a lot of parents who, your child becomes an adult, or they become a young adult, and they're growing up now, right? And sometimes I see parents, they'll watch their kids going through something in particular, and they're not necessarily linking that action they see from their child to what they've done as a parent. And this is what I mean by that. If you have a 22, 23-year-old child, and let's say the child's not responsible. Let's say the child has a whole bunch of kids. Let's say the child is just not doing things in life that's conducive for a structured, valued life, right? They're making a lot of mistakes, doing a lot of fuck shit. Now, sometimes this can be, the kid himself or herself has to take accountability for their actions. Like we can't get around that fact. But I think as parents, man, it's important that we look at everything that we've done in our kids' life. We can't allow, just because they're older now, we can't allow that to erase what we've done. I like to call that like revisionist history. I know a lot of parents who almost forget the fact that they could have been on drugs. They forget the fact that they were going from pillar to post when their child was a kid. They don't include the fact that maybe they didn't have a lot of money, so the kid had to do whatever he or she had to do to get money, right? That's a direct reflection on us. We can't allow our kids to get older and then start conducting ourselves with them like we didn't fuck some shit up. You see what I'm saying? Even if you got a lot of love for your kid, even if your kid is functioning in society right now, if you've had to bring them through traumatic experiences and you see some of that in them now, or you see the negative effects of that now, that's on you as a parent. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I think, and I've seen parents do this, if you have a kid that's, just because they're alive, shit, don't mean you necessarily did a good job. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a lot to being a parent. Way more than just providing food and clothes. That's one element. But what are you providing them spiritually? What are you providing them mentally, right? Like, how are you challenging them mentally? What did you talk to them about in home? Like, what did you guys conversate about? What issues involving the world that we live in? What did you discuss with them? Like that. These are all things that we should be doing as parents. Like, of course, we send our kids to school for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and the teachers have a particular job. I get that, but our job is way more important. Like, there's a school curriculum that your child's going to learn, but what about the life curriculum that you should be teaching them? You feel me? And I don't say all this without factoring in how disenfranchised our people have been, like with the drugs that have been in our community, the lack of finances, the fathers not being in the home. So these are all real things that have affected most of us when we look at our lives and we look at how we conduct ourselves, right? But I think as a parent, in order to be as effective as possible, I think taking accountability the whole way through is really the only thing that can create like a solid, in my opinion, this is the only way to go about creating a solid relationship with your child, because not all parents have had to go through a lot of strenuous things with finances and with not having a man or a woman in the house. Not all parents have had to go through that, but most of the people I know, most of the people that I'm cool with and that I've built relationships with over the years, most of us have kind of those same issues growing up with poverty and fathers not being there, right? So as a mother or a father, you have to be aware of this. If you see your teenage son or your teenage daughter going through a lot of shit, I've seen parents speak about these situations like it's all on the kid, like the kid is just making stupid decisions. Well, yeah, they're making stupid decisions, but how did you set their life up? Like, what did you provide for them as a kid? How comfortable were they? Did they have to worry about food? Did they have to worry about clothes? Could they focus on just going to school? Did you create a structured home life that made it easier for them to go out in the world and conduct themselves? You see what I'm saying? I know a lot of parents who never admit that they fucked up, who never admit that, I didn't do things the way I should have done. Just because you can finish it with, I tried hard or I was there. You got to look deep into what you may have done to affect their output, like how they are in life. A lot of the times when you look at your kid, that's a product of us, y'all. That's a product of what you put in them or did not put in them. And I'm all too familiar with this train of thought because, I had, my first two kids before I was 18 years old. So I'm literally learning on the job. And I can recall times where, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing at all. I was trying to reference how I was raised. I was trying to reference, different families around me and trying to pick up things about how to be. But that shit didn't really work for me like that. I had to figure it out on the job. I had to figure out, how to raise these boys, how to be a man for my kids. You see what I'm saying? And it was difficult. And I know because of that, there's a lot of things that my children struggle with to this day. And in my opinion, it's because of what me and their moms didn't do. Whether we were intentionally not doing it or, we thought we were doing the best we could, that shit don't really matter at the end of the day. Kids remember all the things that y'all go through. They remember all these things, and you don't know how difficult it was for them. Going through life, how difficult it was for you to pay the bills or to get shit popping, but we don't know how that could have affected a child. And now they're adults, and they could be using that same unhealthy framework to raise their families, to move forward in life for themselves. You see what I'm saying? That's why it's important, in my opinion, for all of us to take as much accountability as possible so we can have these conversations with our kids. Like, look, man, I know what I did to you when you were young. I know what I didn't do, but here's how I feel about it now, or here's how I think we can move forward from it now. I think all too often we kind of, like I said, we kind of use revisionist history, where all of a sudden, because the kid's older and they're walking around and they're smiling and shit, you kind of forget the fact that you was on drugs for hella years. You kind of forget the fact that you had to neglect them and they had to live with other people, or you guys weren't stable. You see what I'm saying? I think we do our families a disservice when we don't come to grips with what we were not able to do as parents. Now, of course, being black in America is tough, and we've had a lot of things to overcome that other races of people may not have had to. But at the end of the day, you still got to move forward. At the end of the day, you still got to be the best person you can be for your children, and approaching that from a real positive, empathetic place where you understand, okay, these weren't things I was able to provide for you. So when I see you conducting yourself a certain way in life, even though I may not like it, I have to be a little more understanding, right? And that's just my viewpoint on it, because it's really important that we take a step outside of ourselves and kind of look at what we've created, good or bad. You see what I'm saying? That's the only way that we can help with the relationships we're dealing with now, even if it's not a relationship with your kid, any relationship. If you're not accountable, if you're not willing to say, okay, I fucked up in this regard, then it's going to be real difficult for you to move forward in that relationship. It's going to be real difficult for the person that you're dealing with to be fluent with you, to be loose with you, to be willing to just to speak to you if you haven't even admitted what you've done wrong. You know what I'm saying? So as black parents, man, we have to be fully accountable. I'm the biggest proponent of this because I've done things wrong. Like, I've been there for my children, but throughout the years, I've made a lot of mistakes. These have been mistakes in my quest to figure out how to become a better parent, in my quest to create structure and stability. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I'm never going to act like I didn't. I'm never going to act like I could just sweep that shit under the rug. You see what I'm saying? Because I see my sons, and I see how they act and how they conduct themselves in life. And I can't help but think, okay, that period of time where things weren't right, did that affect them to the point that now I'm getting what I see in them now? You see what I'm saying? Did my inconsistencies or my inability to do certain things the right way, how do they view that? How did they use that information and now are, conducting themselves in their life? And a lot of times I think we'll find that, kids are just kind of spit images of what we've done. They're kind of using the same framework that we did, maybe without even knowing it. So that's why the accountability piece in coming to your kids and say, yeah, I fucked up. And not to point fingers at men or women, but I've seen a lot of times me being on the other end of this where I've been called a deadbeat, right? I've been called a deadbeat dad. A lot of men around me have been called a deadbeat dad. Simply, and this is my opinion, simply because I'm not really willing to do what the woman wanted me to do at the time. But to call me a deadbeat and say that I haven't, deadbeat to me, I mean, you never been there. Never been there. You never put the effort forward. That's not a correct statement for a lot of fathers. But in our community, I don't see the term deadbeat mom being thrown around at all. You see what I'm saying? That's not even really a term that we deal with a lot in our community. And I'm only saying that to say that it goes both ways. There are men who, for whatever reason, duck out on their responsibility. For whatever reason, just aren't consistent and not there and not putting the best foot forward. That shit happens. But just because a kid lives with the mom, just because a kid is in the mother's care, doesn't mean the mother's doing a better job. Doesn't mean that the mother is imparting wisdom into the kid and giving them the mental fortitude needed to kind of function out here in the world. That's not the case. You see what I'm saying? I think a lot of times men get a bad rap just because we're supposed to be the leaders of the family. We are the ones that's supposed to bring the structure to the family. And I agree with that. Like, I'm not, by no stretch of the imagination do I not agree with the fact that men should be there. Men should be the rock in the family. I get that. But women have a duty too. Women have a duty too, just like we do. And it's not just feeding your kid or providing them a place to stay. It goes much deeper than that. You feel me? So as black parents, being accountable for everything you've done to your child, good or bad, is the best way you can move forward in trying to create a positive relationship with them. Now, especially for all of my parents out there who didn't raise their children in their house. I think I speak from that perspective a lot because, of course, my youngest son has lived with me and his mom his whole life, but I have 4 older kids who've never had that experience, and I see the difference in them. I see how the going from house to house creates a level of dysfunction that we all should be aware of. So all my parents out there who don't live with their kid, who's probably never lived with their kid, who has a mother or a father of their child that they're trying to deal with and create a relationship with, and maybe y'all don't see eye to eye. You see what I'm saying? This is kind of, whether you have having 2 parents in the home, you can still have these type of issues where the kid grows up and has resentment, or you can look back and say, okay, I didn't do that right. But from my perspective, when you are not in a relationship with the woman and you guys end up having kids together, a lot of dysfunction takes place in these type of environments, these situations. A lot of negative things may take place, and I think it's up to us to recognize that, and talk with our kids about the moments in time where we weren't on our best. You have to be reflective and be honest about those things, right? You can't make it seem like, well, I was just trying my hardest, fuck it. Well, no, you have to contextualize what you were actually going through. So hopefully your kids don't have to go through it. So hopefully they don't repeat the cycle. I think a lot of times what I'm battling now, and what most of us should be battling, who started, maybe you started off as a mother or a father on rocky terms. Maybe you started off as a parent and you didn't have your shit all the way together. You know what I'm saying? You should be working to make sure that your kids view life a little bit differently so they don't go down that same path, right? We want to create like the generations after us who are better in some way or another. And the only way we can do that is if we're accountable and come to terms with what we did and didn't do as parents. You feel me? So that's been another episode, man, of Melanated Mondays. I think we should all talk about this. If you're a parent and you have kids and you've done shit wrong, talk to your kids about it. Like, be empathetic when they bring up to you some of these instances, or when you can tell some of these things bother them. Talk to them about it. Let them know that you understand where you fucked up. Let them know you understand where you could have done things a little bit better. You know what I'm saying? That's the only way we're gonna build like a better family and a better or a stronger family unit. So hopefully your kids, when they have children, they can kind of conduct things differently. You can't make it seem like your past was all peaches and cream, and you know there was areas where you could have did things better, or areas where you just fucked up altogether. You see what I'm saying? So all my black parents out there, man, let's be accountable. Let's understand how important our role is. Let's understand how important it is for us to acknowledge when we may not have done things correctly. You feel me? So go to melanatedfathers.com to check out the episode. Go to Melanated Fathers TV to check out the episode. Everybody, please go to my YouTube page. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm out.